Welcome to the Lovers Lounge podcast, where we talk to experts and other guests on topics related to love, relationships, and sex. I am your host, Tina Love, and on this episode, we have Dr. Gloria Brame. Now, she is an award-winning sex therapist, pioneering sexologist, and best-selling author. Dr. Gloria Brame has been a legendary figure in the field of sexology since publishing her classic text, Different Loving, back in 1993. Welcome to the show, Gloria.
Well, hello. Thank you so much for having me on.
I am so excited to have you on because, man, are you a busy lady? Well, you've been very, very busy, and you are a professor. Well, you were a professor in English.
Professor, yes.
And then you did some researching and writing and erotically exploring radical sex and fluid relationships in the early 1980s. Tell me about this. How'd you make this transition from English to sex?
Well, it's there really was, it was a transition that flowed with my life. In other words, I was working, and at that period in my life, I suddenly became aware that I wanted different things sexually, and I was more open to a wider variety of things than I had ever imagined. And so I started a support group online that talks a lot about kinky sex and fetishes and what it is and what isn't it. And I did it anonymously, but I had a huge amount of fun, and it was an incredible learning experience.
Okay.
And at that point, I was considering writing a book or going back and getting another degree in English. It was sort of one or the other.
Okay.
And I just to write this book. And after writing this book, I pretty much lost my career as an English professor because it was a very shocking book back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah. And I don't think it's quite as shocking today to talk about BDSM and fetish and things like that. But back in 1990 and 1993, when the book first came out, it was extremely shocking and extremely sensational. So I knew that I wasn't even getting writing jobs anymore because that was something I was doing on the side. Yeah. So it was very tough professionally, but I decided to go back to school and get a degree in sex. Because actually I found so much when I wrote my book, and I did all of this research on why are people like this and who does this kind of stuff, and have people always been this way? Is this something new? Is it like being gay? What is it? Being interested in kink. And by the time I did all of the research for that, which took years, I just knew I had kind of found my own mission in life.
See. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And
my mission was just to have open adult conversations about sex with people.
Yeah.
Without people feeling ashamed or feeling like they were committing sin, but just being able to talk about everything and looking at the science really helped me, because the science is very sex positive, if you will,
right,
about the role of sex in human life.
Yeah. I want to get more into this whole shame thing and all of that. I intend for us to talk about kink and fetishism. But before we do, I can't help but acknowledge the fact that, many feel embarrassed about their fetishes, right? Or their secret desires, or, what turns them on. So you've done a lot of research. So why do you think this is? Why do people feel so embarrassed about their secret desires and fetishes? And then we'll talk about just the subject of sex in general, why people have this whole shame thing. Yeah.
People aren't just, sexual shame runs extremely deep in our society.
Yeah.
So it isn't the people who are just following a different drummer who feel ashamed. People are ashamed to look at to look at genitals, even on their own body, to handle them. They're deeply ashamed of masturbation. It's funny because I see a huge change in a way in culture in that when I started out as a sex therapist, I would say 80% of my clients were people who were ashamed that they masturbated.
Wow.
And that doesn't come up so much anymore. That is not a big, serious concern as it was even 20 years ago.
Back then, yeah.
Yeah.
But you
So,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
so there is, so on some level we're taught to be ashamed of that part of the body. And we are usually taught that it's a dirty part of the body. And we're usually taught that it's a part of the body you only use in marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And that sets everybody up for feeling some sense of embarrassment about sex.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. And it was
and
really
great
some.
privacy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting how you said that. Some people are even embarrassed to even look at their own genitals. Like that's really
Right.
something.
It,
That they've been taught, or they have this whole thing of, you know, maybe when they tried when they were younger, or they were, did something, and somebody's response to them was like, no, don't do that, or, that's bad, or whatever. Do you think
you
sort of,
know, I,
yeah,
right. I think, unfortunately, we don't teach parents how to work with kids through all of their formational years. And I think sometimes it comes from toilet training.
yeah,
Sometimes
wow,
a parent tries to make the kid so responsible that they teach them that part of the body is dirty and don't touch it. You know,
yeah,
you only do it in the bathroom, and this is exactly how you do it, and nothing else is right, and never touch it otherwise. You know,
yeah,
and it is problematic because if you've ever been around 3-year-old boys, they really do love to touch themselves
yeah,
a lot.
yeah,
You know, so I don't know. I mean, I see it comes out. I believe that it happens usually by, even by well intentioned parents. The children learn that there's something strange about that part of their body, that it must always be concealed, that they shouldn't talk about it, that it's naughty to talk about it. And I think that's why also young kids, boys especially, love to talk about it because they know it's naughty.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so then it just catapults into, being a
Right.
teenager, or catapults into being an adult, where
Hmm.
anything that is associated with the body that you're doing, maybe perhaps with somebody else, maybe even in marriage, even, uh, the shame just continues, or this feeling of, oh, I'm doing something wrong, you know.
Right. Right. I mean, if one really cool thing that I've witnessed in my time as a sex therapist is that today's client is more likely to come to me and ask me, how can we make our sex life more exciting? Rather than, I've never seen my husband's penis.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, the internet has really opened the doors of enlightenment
Mm-hmm.
on the variety of sex people have or can have. So I think, that's one of the positives anyway
Yeah.
of the internet. Yeah.
Yeah. We've come a long way. We've come a long way,
We
but
have
we
it
still have,
in
yeah.
a short period of time,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. Because I don't know if you've heard, I did an episode not long ago, episode 44, where I talk. It's just me, and I share the different responses that I've gotten. I've been doing this show since the beginning of the year, and
Uh-huh.
when I tell people, they're like, "Oh, what are you talking about?" And then I say, "Love, relationships, and sex," and they're like, "Ooh." You can just look at their face, and they're like stunned and shocked, and become very uncomfortable, as though all of a sudden they're naked in front of me and like I can see them or something. I don't know, but it just, They just get really, you can just tell, flustered. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'll do a post and I'll talk about my show and sex, and I might get one like or two likes because people, they're to the point where they don't even want to acknowledge that maybe they like something that I've said or something about sex because it's embarrassing. You know what I'm saying? It's just crazy.
I absolutely do because I feel you because I go through the same sort of stuff all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much
You know,
sexual re-
I know I have a much huger following than people who will admit that they follow me.
yeah, isn't that something?
Periodically, they'll drop me a note and say, I follow you. And I'm like, really?
Right, right, right. Because I'll get all kinds of comments offline. Like if I see someone,
Yeah.
they'll talk to me about, but I
Hmm.
find that they don't want to outwardly say, that they're listening to the show, and they don't want to outwardly like something to indicate maybe that they are looking or listening to the show. And so I don't
Well,
know, man. Yeah.
yeah. So there's so many different reasons why. For some of them, it really is shame. And for some of them, they're married to people who wouldn't understand.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm going next. So the whole reason why I'm doing this, because, the Lover's Lounge is supposed to be a show that is for, it could be for couples, it could be for singles. It doesn't matter what sexuality you are,
Hmm.
what religion, what ethnic background, whatever. It's for everybody because I want it to be sort of an educational experience. But I especially want to, have it for couples where we're not embarrassed or ashamed with each other. So, I mean, I just feel like it's really sad if I'm married to somebody 10, 15, 20 years and there's a whole double life that they're living or a whole side of them that I know nothing about. You know what I'm saying? I would be
Yeah.
terribly saddened, but I know that this is happening. I know that there are people out there that are married to someone, see them every day, but they have no idea that this person has a fetish, or they have no idea that this person is interested in kink, or they have no idea. And so I'm doing this show today on the topic of fetish and kink to sort of
Hmm.
educate people and to hopefully open
Hmm.
up the lines of communication, or at the very least, help people to not sort of have this stigma like, this person is weird or crazy because they do have it. Okay? So that's kind of where I'm going.
I love it.
Yeah. So let's define fetish if you can.
Okay.
What is a fetish
Well,
and kink? Hmm. Okay.
right. So a sex fetish, okay? Because you can have a fetish for anything. You can have a fetish for Santa dolls. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right, right, right. Collections, or you love
And also
shoot.
the
Yeah.
right. And so that's the casual use of it. But what we really mean when we're talking about a sexual fetish is somebody feeling aroused by something you wouldn't expect would be arousing. It's something other than, let's say, breasts or genitalia or a rear end. It's somebody who, for example, is really turned on by pretty feet
Hmm.
or has an interest in a particular kind of shoe or really loves female lingerie, whether on themselves or on a partner.
Hmm.
And I'm not gendering it,
Right, right,
except
right,
as
right, right. I
long
want
as
to
the
talk about that.
woman
Yeah. Yeah.
the lingerie may be gendered, but the person, it could be a guy, a non-binary person, or a female-identified person.
Mm-hmm.
So, what you omitted is that there are a lot of people that don't realize that their partner is bisexual, and it's also leading. That's probably the one of the chief reasons why people cheat on each other is because they don't admit to having interest in a same sex partner, or they don't admit to, as you said, an interest in BDSM or in a fetish.
Mm-hmm.
So a fetish is apart from, it can also be really literally anything. Today, I read a story that a pro-dom in England has been getting a lot of requests for people to pretend that they have COVID so that she dresses up like a nurse and takes care of them.
What? Oh wow.
with all the protective gear. I'm like, a new fetish.
Yeah.
Because fetishes sometimes reflect the times that we live in. So, for example, there are people who have a fetish for kids. Before kids, they didn't, there was no kids fetish.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of people who have sneaker fetishes. Again, we didn't always have sneakers. There are people who have zipper fetishes. Well, zippers were only invented in the 20th century. So it's one of the interesting things is that fetishism can, there are sort of body fetishes where you fetishize the part of the body.
Yeah.
But it can also be about a fashion that's an offbeat, something medical, having a fetish about seeing a doctor, getting crushes on doctors, or thinking they're really sexy, or wanting a naughty nurse. Fetishes range all over the map.
Okay. All right. I want to get to this because I was talking to a girlfriend of mine and we went to college
Mm-hmm.
together and we're still friends at almost 50 years old. Um, but she always has loved men with big arms and
Mm-hmm.
chest. Big arms and chest.
Mm-hmm.
So that's her thing. I mean, she just if she sees a guy with big arms and chest, she just loves it, right? Is this
Right.
is
That's,
this a fetish or is this an attraction? That's what I'm trying to figure out. And I know
it's
that
a very
yeah.
it's a very fine line,
Mhm.
but that's sort of a fetishistic attraction.
Right,
The
that's what I
question
thought.
is
Yeah.
when she's with the guy, or if she's with the guy, does that give her a better sexual experience or not?
Mhm. That's the
Right?
question.
Because it's like, I don't know about you, but I love shoes. I love my shoes. I don't
Right.
have a fetish for shoes, but I have an awful lot of shoes.
Okay.
I do like feet, but shoes, I just think they're really pretty. And I have it, but it's not erotic. I don't go to bed with a shoe, and a shoe wouldn't give me a better orgasm. But for a real shoe fetishist or a foot fetishist, it would.
Okay, I want to stop right there cuz I want to get deeper into this, Dr. Brame. So, you're saying that say for instance, I love the stiletto, okay? Or
Mm-hmm.
a man loves a stiletto shoe on a woman. Would
Right.
he prefer then because he likes the stiletto and it really turns him on? Would he then want his wife or committed partner to have a stiletto on while they have sex? Would that be
Yes,
and would he
that would be a fetish.
that would be
That takes, yeah.
and he would actually need that stiletto shoe on in order to reach orgasm or pleasure? It would
Not
I guess I'm just
necessarily, because
asking.
fetishists exist. We all exist on wide ranges, right?
Okay.
So some fetishists literally cannot really perform well. They may not get fully erect, or they may not be able to climax without their fetish object present.
Okay, that's
More
interesting.
likely, they'll be fantasizing that you're wearing them in their head.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But those are the two kinds of ends of the spectrum of fetishes. But a non-fetish guy, he might like it once just as an experiment or because it's hot. But unless he knows that that stiletto really ups his enjoyment, so I would say what a fetish is something that super turns you on.
Okay, right?
It's like crack.
Okay, okay.
It's like sex crack to a fetishist.
Okay.
That may be what really takes his orgasm over the top.
To the next level. Okay. All right.
Yeah, the next level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's get into kink now because
Mm-hmm.
there are some fetishes associated with kink. What is kink? And then let's talk about some of the fetishes that are associated with kink.
Kink is in the eye of the non-kinky beholder sometimes, or of the beholder in general, I guess, because everybody, I've had people who thought anal sex was kinky, you
Okay.
know.
Mm-hmm.
So usually what we mean by kinky sex is something that's just weirder than usual.
Okay.
You know, it may or may not involve penetration, but if it does involve penetration, it may involve penetration by uh, different objects.
Okay.
You know, I don't, how would you define it, Tina? Like, is it kinky if a guy uses a dildo on a woman, or is that straight sex these days?
Well, I don't. I think it's pretty much sort of the norm. But I mean, I mean, I'm just saying
Exactly.
because
One would,
there's well, the reason why I
right.
say is because there's so much now about sex toys, and maybe it's kind of not good for me to answer because I'm hearing so much and learning so much. But I think people are starting to get a little more comfortable with using different types of sex toys and aids in the bedroom. So using a
But
dildo,
it's just happening now. But I guarantee you that there are a lot of people out there, and maybe they're
yep,
older than us,
yep, okay,
you
you're
know,
right, you're right.
who really, there was a lot of resistance to female
Yes,
sex toys
yes,
for many years,
for many
and it
years.
was there were laws against them in some states. There might
Wow,
still be a book.
wow.
Yeah,
Okay, I didn't know
women
that.
were. Yeah, Georgia had one on the book, and I thought Texas did or Alabama did, someplace in the South. Yeah, I mean they were, it was considered that women should only receive their pleasure from their husband.
I see. Wow, I'm learning something here today. I did not realize that. That is really something.
I
Um,
say that the has really changed. The culture has hugely changed.
yeah,
No,
and
I
you know,
mean,
yeah, and I was gonna say it's kind of unfair for me to say, like I said, because I'm learning so much now, exploring and learning so much now because of this show. But I would be, I'm not. I wouldn't be surprised anyway if there's somebody like, well, I'll just say my mother, for instance. I mean, she's like almost 70 something years old, and she would probably clutch her pearls, because
there
what?
you go.
If she's seen one in my drawer, she probably would just fall out on the floor. You know what I'm saying? So,
You
yeah.
would expect it. I mean, all of our images of women as not really wanting sex, that's changed too. I mean, the world is a very different place now.
Yes, it is. All right. So
Yeah.
that's kink. And the
No,
fetishes that involve
but
kink. Yeah.
I don't, right. Okay, typical fetish, probably the most common single fetish is foot fetishes.
Okay.
Yeah. And after that, it depends, I would say, how you define a fetish, but probably bondage and spanking could be considered fetishes
Okay.
for people who really love it and really feel they need it to have a maximum of sexual excitement, which is very common.
Okay.
Role play of all kinds, whether you're the naughty schoolgirl
The doctor or the nurse.
or the doctor or the nurse or the dominatrix or the obedient submissive or whatever it may be. Those kinds of things are also extremely common.
Okay. Let me.
Probably bondage is the second most common.
Okay. So would that be then the whole, the bondage, the spanking, all of that? Would that be sort of like a fetish or kink that involves power then? Is that what you're calling like a powerful erotic sort of fetish
Well,
or
it might be, that's another, you know, it's easier to define what is BDSM than it is to define what is kink.
okay.
Because kink is an umbrella term for all kinds of alternative lifestyles.
All right.
From it might include poly lifestyles, even if it might include non-binary lifestyles. Um, it might include people who like to swing, could be considered, I suppose, kinky by some. I mean, the larger kink communities out there are pretty vast.
Right.
They're really vast. So at this point, I feel that BDSM has become a part of the larger kink community rather than the kink community coming out of BDSM.
I see.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because there's been a lot of people who said, hey, you know what? We love to dress up in certain ways or we love to assume certain roles, but we're not into power relationships. You know,
Yeah.
we like we like to do certain things that BDSMers do, but we don't have any interest in playing out the power dynamic.
I see.
We're looking for the sensation or we're looking for the spirituality. So, for example, have you ever heard of shibari bondage?
No, tell me about it, please.
Shibari bondage from Japan, and it's a tradition of very exquisite suspension rope bondage
Mm.
where you really wrap somebody up so they're very safe. There's no pain or anything, and you suspend them in air
Wow.
as if in a spider's web of rope that wraps around them. And, you know, it's like very yoga looking. And it's it's Shibari, if you want to Google it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very beautiful and very aesthetic. And there is no fundamental power relationship going on.
I see. Just the
So
whole
here
idea.
are great fans of a form of bondage who see it as a beautiful thing, not necessarily an arousing thing.
I see. That's what I was just going to say. It's like a form of art, almost, sort of art and
It's
beauty.
erotic
And
art.
yeah,
Right.
exactly. Okay.
And, you know, you can admire the aesthetics without feeling turned on. You know, it's like I can look at beautiful young models and think they're gorgeous, but they don't arouse me.
Right, right,
You
right,
know?
right. Yeah. Okay.
But,
Cool. All right. Now, I want to get into some other things. Speaking of learning a whole lot here, we're going to learn with you, Professor. Um,
uh,
Fetishes, or I don't know how to call it, where people want to feel like babies. That's one.
okay, it's called, these days they call themselves littles,
Littles.
Littles. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
littles.
Mm-hmm.
Clinically, they were called infantilists. Some people call them adult babies. And so these are grown-ups who like, who have a fetish for role-playing as infants.
Okay. Okay.
Right. What would you like to know about it?
So basically, would they then, because say for instance, I have a husband and he hasn't told me that he wants to feel like a baby, but
Mm-hmm.
would he go to someone to have them treat him like a baby and
He
talk
could, if he
and
wanted to.
and you would, so that person who would do that for him for an hour or 2 hours or however long the session is, um, would talk to him like a baby? I mean, how's this work? How's this work? Would he put on a diaper? How's this go? How's this go?
Well, you greet them and you try to take them to their child's space, which
I
means
see.
you provide a feeling of great safety and affirmation because it's a very sensitive fetish. It's very hard for grown men to allow them, you know, for all the cultural reasons we know about in macho culture, to allow themselves to be seen as that vulnerable by anyone,
Mm-hmm.
and particularly a woman sometimes. Well, no, it's probably worse with a man, but it's very hard to allow themselves. And there is a lot of shame about it, so they have to feel safe in the space, which is why there are nice people who specialize in this and really have good hearts about it and give them a warm environment in which they can feel safe to enact that role. And then basically what they do for an hour is either follow the wishes of the client who says, I would like this, this, and this to happen, or they just say, yes, treat them as little people, not
Mhm.
necessarily age specific, and put them in a diaper, let them snuggle with their breasts if it's a woman doing it, or even if it's a guy.
Feed
Um,
them, maybe? Feed them?
feed them with a bottle, warm a bottle and feed them. Allow them to soil their pants, to pee pee in their diaper, and possibly change them. These are all kind of things that are partly steered also by what the adult fantasizes about.
Okay. And
You
I want to get on
So,
the other side of this.
mm,
As I hear, therapists say, what is the payoff for that person who's a little? So is it that
the
they,
payoff,
yeah, what is the
the
payoff?
pay, I think the payoff is that it's a very, you know, it's it's a sense of vulnerability they cannot feel otherwise.
Okay.
It's a delicious sense of intimacy and vulnerability, and I think that's really what most fetishists get out of their thrill is just comparable to what someone who likes to get laid a lot gets out of that.
I see.
But if you're wired to be a fetishist or a kinky person, you probably won't get a euphoric state from too much vanilla sex.
Hmm.
Maybe it's because you really love your partner, but to get into that euphoric, ecstatic state of sex, which most people who have sex don't get into it anyway, but I'm talking about people who are sexually creative and interested in having fulfilling their own sexual potential.
Hmm.
For a fetishist, that's what will put them into a euphoric state.
I see. Okay.
Yeah,
Now, we
yeah.
kind of touched on this earlier, but I want to go back. Um,
Hmm.
the lingerie. So I'm again using myself as an example. So I'm married to someone, and when I leave the house, whether it's man or woman, well, if it's a woman, I guess it would be okay for the lingerie. But if I'm married to a man, and he likes to put on my lingerie when I'm not at home,
Hmm.
that would be a fetish, would it not? And
That would be. Hmm.
and what is the payoff then for that person? Do they just like to feel soft, feminine? Where are they going with, the other side of this? What makes them want to experience that?
So I think you nailed it. I think that it's liberating I've always found, as a female, always thought that men carry we women, we suffer through a lot of BS, right?
Hmm.
But men carry their own burden and their own wounds from this culture. And one of the most significant wound is that men are always supposed to be so tough and act tough and be men, whatever that means to them.
Right, right, right,
Be
right.
real men,
Don't cry, man up, yeah, all that, yeah.
all of that. But, you know, they don't always have role models for what that's supposed to look like.
Hmm.
Like if they have an aggressive bullying father who's always saying that to them and making them feel less than masculine, well, he was a crappy role model, number one. And second, that's going to raise a son who is very confused about his gender,
Yeah.
you know? So, and then there are just men who always felt they encompass a feminine energy as well as a masculine one, or that they don't feel tied to gender, even though they have the body and the function of a man. So, for all those different reasons, and also just the reason that, you nailed the sensualist, there are some men who just feel like, why don't I get to wear soft, cozy little things like this? And it all just feels so sexy.
Yeah.
Silk is just are really sexy.
Okay.
And
So,
women's underwear is cut really sexy.
yeah. Okay.
Look at what men wear.
Right.
BVDs.
Right. Right. Speedos. Yeah, exactly. So, speaking of feeling, there's what they called furries, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
So what are furries? Help the audience out with this. Yeah.
Good. Furries are people who like to dress up like um, characters in anime or, animal characters
Mm-hmm.
in cartoons or anime or other aspects of life. It's usually not going to be a Yogi Bear. It's probably going to be more like something out of anime, you know. uh, but they have existed for a long time, and
Mm-hmm.
there are people who like to get into a character by wearing furry outfits,
Mm-hmm.
including the head and the whole body, and for some of them, it is a fetish. And for many of them, maybe even most of them, it's just incredible fun.
Okay. So that payoff then is the fun. Or if I love Ninja Turtles, okay. Or if I love
You
Spider
know,
Man or Superman or Batman.
role
uh,
playing as a Ninja Turtle when you have sex, yeah. But also for the fun.
Okay. All right.
They're very fun loving. So I don't
Yeah.
know why people are so upset by them. I don't understand why people get so upset over particular fetishes. You know, like the one that you mentioned with grown people wearing diapers, people really are uneasy about that fetish. They say they confuse it with pedophilia. They think these kind of people will go after children, which simply is not true. It's just a myth, or they think that these people are, mentally something's wrong with them. It's just not true.
Yeah.
They're just people who happen to, no one picks their fetish.
Right.
The fetish is what happens to you at a very young age before you realize it's happening.
Right. And
You know,
I know that I've heard you say
two,
that. Yeah.
four, yeah, it's somehow during some early, formation of your own individual identity, you found something erotic. And kids are very strange people, as we all know.
Yeah. They have
you know,
imaginations. Yeah.
to the weird things we did to ourselves as children. The
Yeah.
things we stuck up our noses and in our ears, and our sense of self exploration, and probably foot fetishism is common because kids crawl around a lot when they're young.
Yeah. So there's something else. Mental fetishes that are mentally connected, or maybe that the response that a person gets from this act or whatever is what turns that person on. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah,
Give an example.
our behind our sexuality always. We talk about our hate, our hearts, or we think about, the penis has a mind of its own. Of course, that none of that is true. It's all happening really in the brain, as the brain accumulates information from all over your body. So when your eyes fall upon a lovely erotic sight, your brain knows. And it starts preparing itself for the potential of a mating
Mm-hmm.
opportunity, and then it starts sending out chemical signals to your body. And all of this happens on a subconscious level. So the question is, what triggers people? So I think if we're able to mind read people's thoughts in a room, we'd find that there was no uniform thinking. When they all would look at, let's say, a stiletto heel, since you used that, there'll be some people in the room who will immediately be aroused and their brains will be producing chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
And there'll be some people who could not be more bored by it. and
Right.
will have no response.
I see.
And other people will fall somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
So it's that way with intercourse too. And that's what we don't talk about. Is that many people, intercourse is not their favorite fantasy. And the assumption, if people used to ask me, what's the most perverted thing you ever heard, in the early days? And I would say two people who never see each other naked and go to bed together and just have 5 or 10 minutes of the same exact kind of sex night after
Ugh.
night.
But this actually has happened. This has happened.
This is a commonplace,
Hmm.
in particularly in older generations.
I'm laughing. I chuckled because my grandmother, she's long passed, but
Mhm.
it's a funny joke in my family. Um, Back when my grandmother was alive, and she had nine children, and she said to them one day, she says, "Your father has never seen me naked." And we just all crack up today because nine children and he never seen you naked. But when you really think about it, as old as she was, it probably happened. Like there probably are people who actually that old,
Yeah,
they were together, maybe had sex in order to procreate, but the lights were all off and they never seen them naked, which is
right. I mean, there are still today, probably, I'm pretty sure, in certain religious communities,
mm-hmm,
you come to bed and your wife is still wearing a nightgown and she raises it.
mm-hmm. And that's it.
That's it.
Oh my gosh, have we come a long way? Oh gosh. Yeah. Wow.
So, I mean, the Pennsylvania Dutch people, I don't think they use vibrators,
Right.
or
Yes.
much less plug-in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I would assume that there are still religious cultures where, and certainly in other parts of the world, many cultures where that's your sex life. And to me, that is very sad.
Yeah. Wow. Man. Before you go, there's also cuddles, isn't there? People who like to cuddle. What is that a fetish? And cuddle with what?
Oh, that's not a fetish. I mean, I would say, who doesn't like to cuddle?
Okay.
People who don't like to cuddle? People who don't like to cuddle usually have problematic sexual histories
Mm, okay.
because those of us who have loving parents who held us enough and grew up to be affectionate people in general like to cuddle.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, you know what? I tell you what, you have really, really educated us today. Very interesting topics. And you have a book on
And
fetish.
lots of books. Yes,
You have
I have
lots
lots
of
of books.
books.
They're just
Yes.
on Amazon. I'm easy to find.
Yeah. You have like how many books, Doctor?
Books.
How many?
9.
Nine. Wow. Wow. Really good. Okay. So, how can the audience maybe hear more from you? Maybe you have a website. I know you have a Facebook. So, tell us about your social media.
Yeah, like anybody can follow me on Twitter at Dr. Gloria Brame, just DrGloria Dr. Gloria Brame. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. I have a website, gloriabrame.com. So I'm very easy to find on the internet.
Yeah. All right. And one thing I want to touch on before we close out finally is that fetishes don't go away. You're big on that. And that people need to know that fetishes don't go away. Is that correct?
That's one thing I always like to talk to a partner about when they're wondering, like, because they have to make a decision. Can they accommodate the fetish within their relationship and make sure their partner gets enough of it,
Right.
because fetishes do not go away.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the Lovers
It's
Lounge.
a pleasure, and my apologies for a noisy dog.
That's all right. Sometimes they just love to, they got to have a say too. They want to be on the Lovers Lounge too. They want to talk.
Oh, she always has a lot to say. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so
I'm
much.
talking to you, Tina, and I look forward to hearing the podcast.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you. And thank you, audience, for listening to the Lovers Lounge podcast, where we talk to experts like Gloria and other people on topics related to love, relationships, and sex. I'm your host, Tina Love. And until next time, peace. And don't forget, love.